everyone, it's Gus Hamer here with Vinny Souza. Subscribe to Blades Rumble on YouTube. Thank you very much, and I will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
What is happening, Blades? And welcome back to the Blades Ramble. I am, of course, Jimmy, and we are proudly sponsored, as always, by Action Coach Sheffield. Thank you to them for their continued support. If you're a growing business and want support to continue that growth, they are the people to speak to. And today we're tackling a topic that's very current. It's very topical at the moment, and it's something that affects us as a club, as Sheffield United as a club, but it's also affecting the entire Premier League. And it doesn't sit well with a lot of people, but for different reasons. We're not a channel that does boatloads of research. Don't be coming here to expect your financial analysis or anything like that, but I've got together with a couple of our Platinum Ramblers, and we're going to discuss it today. So we are discussing financial fair play or financial foul play. And to discuss it, let's bring in Man Mountain and Leary Dave. How's it going, lads? You okay?
Evening, gentlemen. Evening, Ramblers. How are you?
All right. How are we going?
All right.
Yeah, well done, yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining me, gentlemen. So we have obviously spoken before on the Ramble, regular contributors to the channel, and I thank you for that. Paul, you're very passionate about financial fair play and the impact it has on the league as a whole, not just us as a club. You'll get us started then, mate. What's your take on financial fair play as a whole, and where should we begin, really?
Well, I think that financial fair play is going to become bigger, and I'll tell you why I think it's going to become bigger over the next sort of 5 years as well. How it all started and why it happened. So in 2000 and between 2000 and 2008, there was 43 clubs who went into administration. And the reason I looked at this initially was because Leicester City, if you remember, when Sheffield United didn't get promoted from the Championship and Leicester City went up the year after they'd gone into administration. But it was so new at the time that there wasn't actually a points penalty attached to it. So we know when they had the team Muzzy Is It and Neil Lennon and all that crowd.
Yeah.
They went up in second the year after they'd gone down from the Premier League. And what that meant was they were able to, because they didn't pay all the money back and what have you, they ended up finishing second because they didn't have to flog all their assets. They basically kept most of the best players. And it meant that Sheffield United in third place obviously didn't win a playoff. Can't win a playoff. And we kind of suffered. And I thought to myself, well, they've sort of been really badly mismanaged and they've sort of kind of got away with it. And then from then on, the rules sort of changed after that. And it meant that they had to sort of balance the books a little bit. So I won't go into all that madness, but now that there's a new change coming along. The teams at the minute who are under question, so we're talking about Man City, you've got these 115 charges against them. If they've been accused of not providing proper information in terms of their accounts. Chelsea's swizz that they're currently spinning at the moment with Todd Bowley, who spent nearly £1 billion, is that they've spread out all the contracts over 8 years. So, for example, Enzo and Caicedo have been bought for 115 and 105 million apiece. And what they've done basically with that is split that in terms of the laws of the FFP, is that they've split it over eight seasons. So they're paying like 12 and 14 million a season in their accounts for those players. And that's something called amortization. It means that an asset that depreciates over time, and that's why they're able to split it out, which apparently UEFA and the Premier League are going to start to stamp on, because they're going to make them do it over 5 years as a maximum. And the other two, Everton and Forest, have just failed to meet the profit and loss figure, which you're allowed to lose over 3 years. 105 million quid is the allowed loss. You can then leave 15 million of that, like that can count as a loss, and that means that the chairman then has to bail out the other 90 million. But I think the Brennan Johnson thing sort of screwed Forest over a little bit because they didn't sell him in time. I think that's so. There's sort of three different things, I guess, but that's where they are.
Forest and Everton are the ones that are currently under scrutiny because of it. We think Chelsea will shortly follow, like you say, for different reasons. Man City is quite a complex case from what we understand, 115 charges, and will take it'll be 2030 before they're in front of a court, and they'll try and delay it, and sort of dilute it as much as they can, I'm sure. Forest and Everton are very different reasons that they've obviously failed to adhere to the rulings that they can only carry £105 million worth of losses. From what I understand, and again, no financial expert, Paul, your homework, or Dave, if you're up on this, Everton's, I believe, is largely to do with building the new stadium and the infrastructure of the club, and investing way more, up to £300 million in that, and sort of playing dumb, essentially, the fact that, well, we didn't really understand that this were going to be taken into consideration like this. Forest have overspent, just scrambling to stay in the Premier League, spent millions and millions of pounds. Paul, you've got the figures, haven't you, on 44 players. How much were it that they spent? 200
It was 265.
£265 million over 3 windows.
Yeah.
On their squad.
43 players and 43 players over 3 windows, and I just had a look, and it was 265 million. I can't believe that they've managed to. I can't believe they haven't spent more, to be honest. 265 might be what they've spent over. I'm not sure, but
absolutely ludicrous management of the club. But that shows the desperation of some clubs trying to stay in the league. My problem with this, Dave, and I want you to come in here, mate, is because a lot of people are saying, Henry Winter's one that's jumped out this week that said, oh, this is a vindication for Everton, that 10 points was way too harsh and overspending on your squad. You shouldn't be. Look, I understand if Everton's is more infrastructure based and sort of trying to better the club, and I don't know whether it should then be entwined in sort of club losses if you're investing in your club as an infrastructure. Forest is the one that winds me up, because I think if you're going to sign up to profit and sustainability regulations, and you're going to sign up to financial fair play, and all the leagues voted on it, so we all know the rules we're playing by. If they get deducted any less than 10 points, and this isn't going to save Sheffield United, so this isn't a case of a desperate plea to get the Blades to stay up, because we're going down too. But if you deliberately cheat, then Forest spending 265 million quid on their squad is going to be more than 6 points better than Sheffield United, who've not spent hardly anything on this squad. The punishment does not fit the crime for me. I don't know whether you feel that's a similar conversation or whether you're in agreement. What's your thoughts on it, mate?
100%. I mean, for me, cheating's cheating. The difficulty with this is that it's all based around accounting and this 3-year rolling period that they're talking about. So as Paul's mentioned about the amortization, the gamble that you take on that is that you bring in players, they do well, and then you sell them at a profit. So that's an offset there. But also, if you've had, to use sort of simple maths, if you spend 10 million on a player on a 5-year contract and sell them for 7 million after 3 years, you technically make, from an accounting perspective, a £3 million profit.
Yep.
So the water is very muddy with it, and I think the argument for me is more that is how this is determined. Is it fit for purpose, or what isn't essentially the purpose of doing it? Is it simply to stop clubs from putting themselves into a position of administration, or is it to stop clubs overspending? So it's not a black and white case of going cheat or not cheat for me. It's, especially with Everton, if they're looking at, if their losses are based on them spending on the stadium, again, it's a case of, yes, they've spent more than they should have done. But I'm guessing they've all gambled that they were going to be in better positions, that, they were going to finish in better positions season on season, and that they will probably, as a result of that, going to have players that they could, sell on and get offsets that way.
I think that's a really good point. It's like, for example, like that 6 points, like you've said, is nothing now because the 3 teams at the bottom are set to struggle in such a way. that will not really affect Everton's future, because the likelihood is they'll get out of it, won't they?
Yeah.
And I think that, like you say, does the punishment fit the crime? And when you look at some of the big teams that have got away with stuff in the past, so I'm looking at Man City and PSG, both got a 60 million euro fine, 60 million euros, which is the best part of 50 million quid, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But they've spent over £1 billion in building a club from the ground up, and that's Monty Burns chub change, and absolutely not anything, that not a drop in the water, really.
This court fines you $3 million.
Smithers, my wallet's in my right front pocket.
And I think that's your way for like setting out these guidelines, not just to like stop these big and up and coming clubs from taking over, which I think it was. PSG and Man City at the time were emerging clubs. They were like ready to join the top table if you want. And I think there was a little bit of, I don't know the ins and outs of UEFA. We just get the smell that they just didn't like these upstarts who are coming up on the rails on these massive juggernaut clubs who've been established for 50 years. So I don't know whether it was something to do with that, but it just doesn't feel like there's any real punishment for any of this. And I don't know what the answer is really. It's harsh, really. I don't know.
That leads us nicely actually into something that we were talking about when we were even just discussing whether this would be a topic worth getting together and chatting about, because it's two-pronged, this approach, and this is why I call foul on FFP. So I've given the argument that the punishment doesn't fit the crime for teams like Forest, who are just trying to spend their way out of trouble, which FFP is supposed to prevent completely. I think if you put Forest and Everton on 13 points with Sheffield United and Burnley now, the odds would still be on Everton and Forest to finish above us, because they've spent that money already. They've got better squads than us, and they're in a better position because they've got that unfair advantage, whatever way you want to put it. But you've just touched on something there. Well, it was Newcastle that I think we used as the example, weren't it? That they might, even though they're now a massive financial powerhouse, they may struggle, certainly for some time, to break into that elite category, because these rules and regulations will hamstring them. And it's a question of whether the top six, essentially, have become like a Premier League mafia and kept all the gold for themselves because they've already invested that capital into their clubs, got themselves to a position of power, and now new kids on the block like Newcastle cannot spend the amount that they want, even though they're able to get into that category. So it's twofold, really. So your clubs like Newcastle, Forest to a much lesser degree, but Forest can't break into that mid-table, maybe potentially challenge for Europe group because they can't spend the cash without falling foul of the rules. Is it safeguarding the Premier League's elite and keeping the mediocre Premier League teams as the bottom 14, if you like? And then teams like Sheffield United, Burnley, maybe even Luton don't have a prayer of establishing themselves because of that two-tier system, and we find ourselves as the runt of the litter.
Yeah, so I think that's the Chelsea approach. I suspect, and have no specific evidence to back it up, that they had a strategy to spend a lot of money bringing in a lot of players on these 8-year contracts.
Yeah.
But it wasn't going to be a long and sustained period of acquisition. So they would do it over maybe 1, 2, 3 windows, and they would have the players in the squad to then compete for honours, and they wouldn't spend a great deal after that. And with some of the legacy players that they've had, selling those guys on, and as we mentioned before, with the amortization, from an accounting perspective, making profit, they wouldn't then end up in any issues with FFP. I think if you look at a lot of the smaller clubs, and we definitely fall into that, we've not spent money because we're frightened of breaking FFP rules. We've not spent money because we've not got the facility to do it.
Yeah.
So that's going to stop any club that's lower than the top 6, unless their recruitment strategy is miles above anyone else, and they can find players around the globe that are going to cost them next to nothing and propel them to success, or they quickly build this continual chain of buy for 10, sell for 30, and get around it that way. There's not a chance that anyone else is going to ever get to the point of having equitable financial muscle with the likes of, the City, Liverpool, Man United sort of scenario. No way.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? That's the best point yet, because despite all the revenue that that the Premier League makes, those top 6 teams, they command 2/3 of the whole division's revenue. So at the top of the tree, you got Man City and Liverpool, who I looked at some figures for 21-22, 619 million for City and 594 million for Liverpool. So the kitty that they've got to play with compared to the teams at the bottom that season, which were Norwich, Watford, and Burnley, who are on between 124 and 134 million, is about 5 times the amount. So that means that they can go out and spend 5 more times on wages, 5 more times on transfer fees. It also includes agents' fees and other bits and bobs which UEFA are bringing in. But like you say, is it ring fencing those top 6 to just be impenetrable forever? I think that the fact that Man United, to an extent recently, and more so Chelsea, that's just mismanagement of their money. The fact that they're pulling in that giant revenue means that they'll get a good manager in the next 5 years and they'll be back competing with those teams at the top, because they just have resource. And resource is the big kicker in how well you do in a division. I know we've had nightmare seasons with Sheffield United where we've gone down to League One with quite a big budget in the Championship. I know there are anomalies. There always will be. Luton last year in the Championship. You've also got the likes of like Villa, obviously, this season. We've had the biggest surprise ever in Leicester previously, that romantic love of football that we've got. But that particular season, 21-22, the top 6 in terms of finance all finished in the top 6. So they all qualify for Europe, and they're all safe as houses for next year's money. And the bottom 3 that year, the 3 teams that I just mentioned, were the 3 relegated teams. So revenue versus league position in that particular season just fitted like that. And it just says a lot of the romance in footy is that Leicester City season. It's that can you get up and stay up? And I think, like, as the revenues have got higher and higher, it means that the gap between the Championship, obviously, and the Premier League is just going to get bigger and bigger. And again, proof's in the pudding this year. Top 3 in the Championship. The 3 that went down last season, you've got your anomaly in Ipswich. There's always going to be one, and there is this year, who are probably going to fall off it towards the end and end up in the playoffs. But those top 3 are likely to come back. And is that going to be the case now forever and ever? Amen. Is that the thing now? The 3 that come down generally are going to be there or there, and they're always going to be there or thereabouts. But as that gap gets bigger, 10 times the money for finishing 20th in the table in the English pyramid, I suppose, to 21st. So you finish 20th, you get 10 times more than 21st, and that means that bridging that gap for those teams in the middle is just going to be so difficult. It's just going to get worse. It's just going to get harder and harder to establish yourself. And I think that's the problem. As a competition, as a spectacle, the Premier League's always been the most watched one across the world, usually because it's so competitive and teams don't generally, run away with it. And there's always a competition for the trophies. But what are teams playing for now? What are we trying to aspire to as a Sheffield United supporter? What are we trying to be now? What's the goal? Because I'm telling you, if someone offered you 2nd place in the Championship like last season, or someone offered you 20th in the Premier League like this season, I know which season I enjoyed a lot more as a supporter of the club.
Yeah, that's right. And even if somebody guaranteed you, like we're doing, season on, season off. So I'll give you 4 seasons at 15th in Premier League, or I'll give you 20th, second, 20th, second, you'd probably do yo-yo, wouldn't you? Because you're guaranteed to see some games that are winning. It's a terrible Premier League season, but at least there's something to fight for in Championship. And it's tricky because the rules set as they are, it's not what clubs are able to spend, it's what they're allowed to spend. So I've given the argument against Forest, but it's also an argument for Forest that is it better, or was it better before FFP when it will look at the draw essentially on who bought your club, who was able to finance it the best, and the richer clubs bought the best players, but there were no restrictions. So yes, you might gamble, and you might end up being a Portsmouth, unfortunately, or God forbid a Bury, but teams gambling and sort of going for it and laying everything on the line. Forest can't do that now. They can't spend as much as their owner would like to try and get into the top 12. They're going to struggle because of the place they'll finish, 16th, 17th, hopefully 18th. Then, it's going to be restrictive on them, isn't it, because of these FFP restrictions.
And that's the argument, isn't it? Because I've got mates who are Forest fans, and the rhetoric from those lads is we've had a go. That's what we've done. We've actually gone and had a go. Yeah. And I think that as United fans, we're always going to poke the bear with Forest, always, aren't we? But
always.
But the truth is, they have had a go, and if our chairman has fronted up like their chairman had, yes, I think it's been mismanaged. I don't think there's a Forest fan alive who thinks that it's not been mismanaged. But on the flip side, he has put his money where his mouth is, and we kind of, because of our circumstances, aren't able to do that. And I don't know. There is an argument for saying, well, if your owner wants to smash some money at it and have a go, is that a big problem? And is FFP there, like you said, just designed to keep the big boys big, the little boys little, and the status quo cracking on forever and ever, amen? Because that's what it feels like a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I think across Europe it's being felt as well, because the Premier League now, in terms of cash revenue that every team gets. So another thing is that 11 currently of the Premier League teams are in the top 20 richest clubs in the world. That's the Premier League.
That's madness, isn't it? That's madness.
And 16 of the top 30 already today, as we sit here.
And I assume Sheffield United aren't one of those.
No, they're certainly not. So we're in the four that aren't, I'd say. But but no, I mean, that just tells its own story, doesn't it? And I think UEFA have kind of will be looking at Premier League teams. They need them to, galvanise their product to the Champions League. They need them to make it competitive, and it's the most watched league, so they've got more supporters than most other clubs around the world. So it's a spectacle, isn't it? But they've got to protect everybody, because there's some European royalty who are looking at us lot going, well, why do Sheffield United get more money than Barcelona in a season? And that's becoming reality, and that's potty when you think about it.
It's crazy, mate. Absolutely crazy.
If we look back to a time there wasn't FFP and apply it to now, how much of a difference towards the bottom of the table do you actually think it would be making? I don't think we'd be spending any more money, but would Luton, would Burnley, would Palace, would everyone else towards that bottom part of the league be spending more than they are now?
I don't think it'd affect the lower teams like ourselves. Burnley have spent 100 million as it is, so they've gone for it in a lot of respects. I think teams like Forest would be further away because they'd spend more money. I think Newcastle would have spent an awful lot more money, but I don't think you'd have had much more than that, to be fair. Obviously, Everton wouldn't have had the points deduction, so they'd probably be a little bit more comfortable in mid-table. So it skews it a little bit in that way, but I don't know how much it affected January this year in terms of, I don't know how close teams are sailing to that FFP, and that would have, like a Brentford, for example, who are going to lose Ivan Toney at end of season, would they have panicked and maybe sold him and then re-spent if they knew that they could rebalance the finances that way? I don't know. It's a really, obviously we'll never know, but I think it'd look very different the second half of the season now.
Yeah, if you just look at Man United, they were, how many people could see they needed a centre forward, and oh no, we can't sign anyone because of FFP. And you think, oh, what did you spend in the summer? I think it affected January massively.
I do. I think. I don't know. Like we said about the punishments, I'm not sure if they're going to be sustained, and if they're going to be big enough to sort of put teams off from breaking the rules, because they haven't been so far. I don't see UEFA or the Premier League having the balls to do what they did with Rangers in Scotland, for example, where they busted them down to League Two. Was it
League Two in Scotland?
Bottom of there, and they are a juggernaut club. They're 50% of the league, basically, aren't they, in terms of interest from fans?
Yeah,
and
top of the league now.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know whether these things I don't know if they make any difference, because like in the last year or two, there's been a load of European clubs, PSG, Inter, AC, Juventus, and Roma were all fined in 2022. But it's not like we think, oh yeah, they're struggling now or they're not doing very well anymore. And it doesn't. I don't know whether it makes any difference, but the fact this week that Everton have appealed it, I think that shows a lot of weakness, to be honest, on the part of the Premier League, because the door's open now for everybody to appeal everything.
Oh, of course it is, yeah.
It just opens up a legal, I don't know, Pandora's box, basically, because what that means is if a team in the future gets busted for 10 points or 15, 20 points, whatever they decide to do with them, they can appeal that later. And that can change and depending on the timeframes of when that happens, that could change their season. It has
already. It has already with Everton, hasn't it? There were 10 points and now they're 6. For us, that doesn't really make a difference. We know where we are in the league. For Luton, they're now much further away from Everton and getting out of the relegation zone than they were. So it's a real... How can you do that? Like midway through a season? Well... They're this close to you, and they're not really, but they are. Well, we've still got another hearing to go, so wait and see. There might be more.
What I was going to say, Jim, was if they went down. So if you imagine if you got a 10-point deduction, you went down.
Yeah.
You appeal it. They reduce it because they've set the precedent that they'll reduce it if you appeal, or you can get it reduced. And they reduce it, and then you look back at the table and go, well, if we'd have had 6 points instead of 10, we'd have survived.
Yeah,
and then the Premier League have got a massive problem, and I think that's a massive thing. Getting the appeal turned means that it's just it's open season for appeals for this, that, and the other. Because to give them 10 points, they had to be sure that they were guilty. They had to be, and someone decided it's 10 points because we've seen that this has happened, and this is what we're giving you. And then 3.5 months later, it's 6 points. It's like.
So do you not think that's an issue when you bring in a rule into any, let's say a sport, but you don't define the punishment if the rule's broken? So they put FFP in, but never defined if you were whatever over, this is what's going to happen. So anything is going to get appealed.
Of course,
there's no
boundaries in place. There's no declared boundaries. Is there?
I'll tell you why that's an amazing point. Because if you know that the punishment is 6 or 10 points, and you know that you're a team that's going to go pretty well, you might as well go and smash 500 million in a transfer.
Exactly. I was just going to apply that point. If we get taken over halfway through next season by a multi-billionaire comes in and buys Sheffield United, and he says, in 3 years we're going to be in Europe. Well. And we know it's a 10-point maximum deduction. Go, like you said, go lay 500 million down. Sign them all up. Sign everybody up. We're going to smash that championship. We're going to smash, we're going to stay up by a country mile, more than 10 points than other two teams that come up with us, and hopefully Forest who are below us. So you do it, don't you? If the rule's not strong enough, then people are going to take advantage of it.
Bowley's been in there 2 years. He's spent £1 billion. That's 1,000. That's 1,000 million quid. He does not give two. Whatever about flying FFP. Not. He's gone. Oh yeah, we can do this. This will be all right. And he's gone
they
for it.
They probably want it now. They take the points. They take the points deduction now because they're not in the fight for anything. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. But they will be because of the size of the club and the revenue down the line, because of the size they are. they
You
will
take
be
the hit
in
now.
the shout.
And now, are they, because they've spent that, and and I appreciate Chelsea are full of flops, so it's not really the best example, but if it had worked, so like a Man City, for example, and a Liverpool, will likely vote to keep FFP now. So your Newcastles and Chelsea's who are trying to rebuild, and Man United who will come back again, cannot breach that gap. You cannot bridge the gap between them again.
Your clubs can't vote on it. The clubs cannot vote on rules.
There's so many conflicts of interest now that it's just. Is it a dead duck? Is FFP a dead duck? Is it something that we just need to scrap and go back to how things were with no, or does it just need an independent regulator saying your club can't literally afford to do that? If you do that, then you're putting your club at risk, and we'll dock your points before you spend, or whatever it might be. I don't know how it works, but there's cries for an independent regulator because this is a shambles. Let's be right. 10.6 points. You're appealing. Come end of season, you might be able to appeal still. Sheffield United and Burnley will be gone. Luton might not know what division they're in. It's absolutely ridiculous. How can best league in the world be in such a farcical situation?
But it's got to be the same everywhere, because all that will happen is if we put loads of restrictions here, then it'll go to La Liga, and Barcelona and Real Madrid will do what they did sort of 10, 15 years ago. And all the best players will go there, and there'll be nothing in the Premier League until they get sick of it and everything goes. It's got to be worldwide. You've got to have one set of rules that's set by the governing body of football.
The Premier League do make their own rules, and they are different to UEFA at the moment. So they're not in line. They're not aligned with that. The trouble that the top teams have got, obviously, is that the big cash cow for them and the big attracting best talent is that they need to play in the Champions League, and UEFA run that. So that part of the reason that the clubs have stopped spending money this transfer window, so it was really, really quiet in January, was because they're basically ramping up how much you're allowed to spend. So, or what the percentage of your revenue is coming down, basically. So at the minute it's at 90%, I believe. And then it goes down next year to 80%. And then in 25-26, it's 70%.
Really?
And that's on agents' fees, wages, expenditure on transfers, etc. That's all that stuff. And that means that clubs are currently in consultation at the minute, because loads of them are way over this. Like, they're crazy, out of control over this amount. So that's why they're all bringing it down and bringing the whole system down a little bit. The trouble is, it won't necessarily stop the Premier League bigwigs, because, like you said, they're still going to have this, because of the revenue from the TV and the Premier League being the biggest and best products out there in the world, in the eyes of the world. The deals are crazy for the Premier League, which means that in about 10, 15 years, your Real Madrids and dominant teams who've been dominant before, that won't be a thing, because all the best players will be playing in England, because England is the place where all the money is for TV rights and everything else. So they're a little bit scared of that as well, UEFA, because the more rules that they impose, what are they going to do? What did they try and do a year ago?
Yeah, Super League. Yeah.
All the big wigs all over the world. If the Premier League keeps going like that, and the Bundesliga and the Serie A and La Liga, they're all down here, and it's already happened. And again, more stats. So so when Leeds United were in the Premier League, yeah, I know. In 2023, they spent £30 million plus on a player in the January transfer window. I'm not sure exactly which one it was.
Rutter.
But it could have been Rutter, yeah, or it could have been Sinistera, could it? I think he were quite a lot of money. But anyway, they spent that much money. And that is more than all the teams in La Liga and Serie A put together. So La Liga's 21 mil. They spent 21 mil in that window as a collective, all the teams in that league. Serie A was 8 million. The Bundesliga a bit higher on 42 mil. But Leeds, who are now a championship team, by the way, spent more than all those those two divisions put together, and that just tells you the muscle in the Premier League. Now, the big clubs, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Juventus, Barcelona, the royalty of European footy, if they continue to see this trend where the Premier League teams and teams like Sheffield United are getting more money than they are for their deals, they're going to go, do you know what, lads? Let's all get together. Come over here, lads. Let's have a chat about this European Super League. And they've already tried it once. And for me, as a fan of a club, like provincial working class club, if them six bugger off, this would be a very exciting Premier League. Yeah, all of a sudden, it would be really, really exciting for me personally. And I just think that I won't be crying and saying it's a travesty and all this stuff if it happened, and it will happen if it continues in this way, because the big clubs in Europe can't let it happen. They can't let teams at the bottom of the Premier League be on more money than the big clubs in Europe, because sooner or later they're not going to be competitive in the transfer market for anybody.
I'm torn personally, because there's a big part of me that thinks I don't like FFP, and I don't think it's fair. I can understand why it's there, and I think there's a big misconception around like people will see this and think, well, Sheffield United have not spent anything. How can we be concerned about financial fair play? It's about every club's individual spending within themselves, really, to a degree. It's how much you're spending on wages compared to your turnover and things to that extent. But I think about clubs like Forest, and you mentioned Leeds, and it reminds me that obviously I think Leeds will be in the Premier League next year anyway. But it reminds me of the power that's behind some of these clubs, the financial muscle. And if they get into the Premier League and they're allowed to free spend, then yes, there's a lot of misses goes on, as Forest have proven, because you can chuck money at stuff and it's not always a success. But they will get it right eventually if you spend enough money. And Forest and Leeds are just two of the clubs that could solidify themselves in the Premier League with the amount of financial backing there are. There's not going to be many spaces for teams like Sheffield United left. And as a Blade, that concerns me. So that's leaning me back towards financial fair play, where we all stay within our own limits and sort of try and make ourselves sustainable, which we've been doing for the last couple of years now. But I don't know, Dave, what's your thoughts, mate?
I think it's a bit twofold. So I've been racking my brains all day about how to sort of apply this to football, but without going too off topic, I've been a big F1 fan since I was a kid. And they have, over the last few years, implemented cost caps to stop teams spending way too much money. And also, they have a sort of tiered development system to allow the smaller teams a chance of sort of catching up and not always being, the 10th car, say a Williams or whatever, is always at the back. And their cost cap is you can spend every team can spend exactly the same amount of money. They have a caveat that your drivers aren't included, your three highest paid members of staff aren't included in that, marketing and all that sort of stuff. But essentially, for the most part, they can all spend the same amount of money. That allows them to then, it's about who's cleverest with that, as to who makes the best car. But then, and from a development point, you have 100%, say, of an amount of time that's halfway. The higher up you finish the year before, you get less, and the further down you finished, you get a bit more. I have sort of like as a model quite like it, but I'm thinking, how do we apply that to say the Premier League? Because the big thing for me is when we are up and in there, I just want to see us compete.
Yeah,
I don't really want to see us come up and, I knew from the Stuttgart friendly, just from then, how far away we were and how tough this season was going to be. And I know early season results, we had some bad luck with conceding late goals and whatnot, but it was always going to be incredibly difficult over 38 games to sort of sustain it. And I just, I just dread the idea that, you know, if we do as expect to go down and we expect to compete again in the Championship, that we come back up, that it's just another season of really, you know, struggling, and it's almost soul destroying at times. Thinking, you know, you want to look forward to going and thinking, you know, it's like the old day when we went up before and we played Arsenal at home, and you like, God, Arsenal are a great team, but somehow we just seemed to, even if it was just, you know, it was 1-0 or something, we somehow managed to just find something. And I just feel that the gap's getting so big now, and the levels are getting so high.
Agree, yeah.
It's just so hard. So
But
I
again,
don't know what the answer is.
It's hard to know what to wish for, isn't it? Because, like we said, I've been saying it all season. If we're up like we are, you know, if you're Luton Town, like I said this to you lads earlier, it was like if you're Luton Town this season, because of where they are and where they've been, you know, in the conference 10 years ago, whatever it were, and you think for them what they're going to get out of it. So for them, it's a win, even if they get relegated on the last day, on the last minute, they've still won because they've got a chunk of cash that's going to change the future of that club. We spoke about it, the training ground, the infrastructure of the club. They can improve everything with that money. Brilliant. And they've known what they were going to do from the very beginning. I think as Blades fans, because we've been there before, there's a bit more expectation from us that we're going to compete, because we went up and finished 9th once upon a time. And it wasn't that long ago. And that seems like a million miles away from where we are right now in terms of the team that we've got. But let's not forget, Chris Wilder did that for us, you know, and we do forget very, very, very quickly that we were down the bottom of League One when he took over. And there's loads of fans in and out about him, but we were down the bottom of League One. He took us to 9th in the Premier League. Yes, he went off under a cloud, and we've said it before. But to do that, you think about it, in the modern game, that'll get harder and harder to do, don't get me wrong, but that's an unbelievable achievement. That season was the best season we've ever had as Blaze fans. It must have been for most people. And because we were expected to do nothing. And like I said, I feel like we wanted a bit more out of this season, didn't we? Because compared to our spend, we should be doing what we're doing right now. This is where we should be, 20th or 19th, because we haven't invested. We haven't been able to. We haven't done it. Okay, so we're just going to have to suck it up and get on with it. But I think that Luton are going to be the big winners. Burnley are going to be the massive losers, because Burnley have spent money on a team that they thought, Sander Berg thought, was going to be
nice.
Yeah, well, they must have thought we're going to be mid-table here.
Yeah,
the
pundits said that. Because of the way Burnley came up, Burnley will be all right. It's Luton and Sheffield United that are going to struggle. That was the sort of soundbite that everybody heard.
Yeah, they're the big losers in this scenario, because I'd imagine it will be us three, unless Luton can spring a surprise and we suck Forest in, or I think Brentford getting Tony back's massive for them. I think he'll probably get him over the line, I'd say now. But I think Forest are the danger ones. But they've got their striker back now, who's a massive difference maker in Awaniyi, and he's probably going to score enough goals to keep him alive. Unfortunately for Luton, I think, you know, they're looking like they're struggling a bit now. But I just feel like, what do you want? What is it we're after? Because the teams in the Championship, when we come down and we've got our parachute payments, we'll be the bad guys. Do you know what I mean? We'll be the ones with the big budget who can probably gazump most of them for players, and you know, and are probably expected to finish in the top 3 certainly. And I don't know, it's hard, isn't it? Because I think the first thing that the league have to do is start having a bit of parity between the Championship, the bottom of the Premier League, and the top of the Championship. That gap of 10 times more money you can't go on like that, because you just basically, you might as well go to an American system. So in America, they safeguard the 20 teams or however many teams are in the leagues. There's no relegation, there's no promotion. They just safeguard it, and they say, right. And then they have the draft system, which is obviously Like Dave was talking about the money and how to make it more competitive, they get first pick on the new players, etc. from the college system. It's more of a competition. But the Premier League as a competition, is it a good competition? You know,
Historically, it's always been that the Premier League have no real incentive to help out the EFL, because why would they? Theirs is the golden goose. They get all the TV money. They are where the eyes are. The EFL suffers effectively similarly to La Liga and the Bundesliga and all that. Everybody else is an afterthought to the Premier League. But now, like you say, Paul, I think it's the most eye-opening season in some time that it's been, where the gap is more than clear. And you think this can't continue because it will become too predictable. You won't get interesting relegation battles if this continues, where the bottom three are always going to be a lot weaker than the rest of the league. You need to give them some incentive. And I don't just mean you give those three more finance. You have to spread it through the leagues, because otherwise you're going to get the same three teams coming up every year. It'll be us, Burnley and Luton, hopefully, but, coming up next year in 18 months' time, as Leeds, Southampton and Leicester go back down again, if it's going to continue down the same pattern, and it can't get like that. So surely this is the first time that the Premier League has to look at some sort of longevity in terms of their own model. Like you say, otherwise, it's another MLS.
You want that almost bottom six, maybe 5 or 6 teams. You want it to be quite close.
Right.
You want it to go as long as you can. And even if you do go down, as gutting as it is, I remember, going down in the Warnock year. As gutting as it is going down in that last game, I'd rather that than be sat in, February
20th,
if not earlier, just going. Oof. And you think
11 more to go.
The only bit I'm looking forward to with matches is going and seeing some of my mates in the pub beforehand.
Mate, there could be teams survive this season with 25 points.
Yeah,
it's crazy,
and it used to be 40, didn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
you used to need 40 points to survive.
Yeah,
that's what we used to say.
Yeah, get to that golden 40 points. Is that your target for this season? The Ascot managers 40 points.
Yeah. But there'll be teams on 30 rubbing their hands together going, we're safe as houses here on 30.
Yeah, your Crystal Palaces will be thinking, no way we're getting dragged into that. Not a chance. They're just too poor.
And also, I've never had a feeling like, and even after Sunday, which I thought, we certainly could have won that game.
Yeah, we could.
Even after that, where I've just thought, oh God. What are we now? We're 9 points off it or something. What are we now? We're
8. I think we're 8 points, but 9 with goal difference.
That is not a lot. that is 3 victories. That is like we could win 3 games and be right back in the mix. But how are we going to win 3 games?
We were. We're now at 11 points off because of Everton's points.
Okay.
4 games.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 4 matches. Yeah. Again, we haven't had 4 wins all year, have we? So
no.
So that's. I mean, the bottom 3, like you say, it's just not going to be entertaining down there this season, and I think the danger is the top's going to become something similar. There's going to be 6 sides, and they've talked about a big 6 for a long time, but the big 6 is just going to be entrenched. That's it. They're going to be the top 6. You might get the odd big surprise with Villa or something, but they'll drop out of it again because their monies will never match those other ones, and the cycle will continue of being really, really predictable. The Championship's a much better division, but again, that could become a similar story, and it almost is this year, obviously, with the 3 teams coming down, expected with the budget, with the players to absolutely dominate that division, and that doesn't make for any great spectacle, really, does it? For all these clubs that are involved. So,
if you're going to be a neutral fan and think about it, if you're a fan of another Championship club and you think, well, we've no chance of going up, so what we're playing for, it kind of takes some of that excitement out of it, doesn't it?
Mate, I'm saying it now. The best thing that could happen and it will happen. Like I think it'll happen for the reasons that I told you about the other big teams across Europe. The best thing that could happen to English football would be that Super League.
And you think it'll happen?
100%. And I'll tell you, and I I do because the other big clubs in Europe have already made noises about doing it. Okay, they've already made noises about doing it. The big clubs in England have made noises about doing it because they know, and the owners know, and let's face it, they're the ones who are the most important. Foreign owners in this country do not come to this country to take over football clubs to make massive losses on what they're doing. You know, they don't. I know. Notoriously, football clubs are not great investments for people who've got loads of money, and we think it's just a toy like it was for Abramovich. They want to make as much money as they possibly can. 100%. They're business people. That's how they got the money in the first place. If someone presents to them and says to Barcelona, Real Madrid, Juventus, and all those big clubs that I spoke about, and turns around and goes, "Do you know what? We'll offer you this much money because this will be the primary product in the world for football. This is what everyone will want to watch all over the world. Come and join this European Super League. Come and do this. We'll make you 10 times more than you got now." And they say to the Premier League teams, "We're going to double your money. We're going to triple your money." There's no way that's not going to happen because these laws that are coming in, 70%, restricting multi-billionaires who don't like being told what to do and saying, "Oh yeah, you can spend what we tell you can spend if you want to be in our competition." They'll just create their own competition. There's no reason for it not to happen. And all the pundits who will be outraged about it because of traditional things and whatever, as a traditional football fan, that will make the Premier League so much more competitive and so much more interesting. Because
the Premier League itself probably wouldn't agree, though, would they? Because they want those glamour sides, those powerhouses in their league. So if that does get proposed, you can bet that they'll chuck everything they can, including the power and the money that goes with it, at the Big Six to keep
Division One again, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I don't think UEFA have got the smash for that. I don't think they've got it. They haven't got it. I don't think they've got the money to do that. To be honest, I really don't think that. I think because basically the whole thing's governed by TV companies, not UEFA. UEFA are the governing body, but the TV money is the most important thing. And if the TV people think that they can make even more money out of subscriptions on the European Super League, why would they give a monkeys about traditional British football teams and who's been there the longest and all the stuff that the fans care about? Not wanting to travel into Italy and Spain for their away fixtures. I don't think the fans will get a say. I think the chairman will be led by their pockets because they always will be, and I think the TV will decide. And if the TV can make those offers to those other leagues, if they say, "Well, if you stay in La Liga, it will be that the 20th team in the Premier League will get more money than you next year," they're not going to put up with that. They're not going to sit on their hands and let that happen for years and years, because over years and years they'll just become less competitive, won't they, against those teams? They'll just be able to poach everybody. Every decent player will come to England because they can't compete money-wise.
Sheffield United will be able to outbid Bayern Munich.
Jimmy, if you look at the revenues for this season from TV money and everything else, yes, I know Bayern Munich are they're a worldwide club, and Bayern Munich is probably a stretch. But there'll be clubs near the top of those big European leagues that we have got double what they've got this season.
It's madness, isn't it? Absolute madness. Dave, are you calling it financial fair play or financial foul play?
A foul. I don't think it's fit for purpose. I don't think the punishment's fit for purpose, and I don't think it actually helps anyone be competitive unless you were already up there and you just can keep spending it.
Paul?
Yeah, I'm swinging towards I'm swinging towards foul, simply because I do buy the narrative that Everton, with the stadium, they're trying to bridge the gap. They're a traditional big club in England. They've looked at what Tottenham have done. They've gone, our ground needs redevelopment. We need to move with the times. We need to do this, that, and the other. And to punish them for that feels unfair, because the other big clubs in the league have already done it. The Emirates, Old Trafford's always been massive. You got, Tottenham have done it. Man City have certainly done it. And they're trying to do something like it. And they're just going to get them, because of the new rules, they're going to get their hands slapped for trying to show a bit of ambition. And again, as much as I know we won't like this as Blades fans, has the Forest owner just had a go? Or is it totally unfair on everybody and they deserve to die for doing this, that and the other? But I don't know. I feel like it is tricky. It's tricky, but I think it's foul play.
I agree. In years gone by, it had just been another competitive owner, wouldn't it, that's having a go with his club, like you say. So that's what you call a full house. Financial fair play is not fit for purpose. That's what we're saying on the Ramble today, boys, I think. So, yeah, if you're watching Premier League, UEFA, big guns, that's it. Listen to the Ramble. Get it sorted out. We are going to be doing several of these get-togethers as a trifecta, a trifecta. If anybody's got any good names that you want us to call this like mini series, they won't all be as heavy topics as this, but it would just because this was a topical debate that was well worth, we thought, discussing. There'll be other more fun topics that we're looking to get into. But if you have a name that you want us to call this mini series, then get it in comments and let us know. But for now, come on, you red and white wizards. Come on, boys.
All the Blades.
Yes.